Hello and welcome back to the Pro AV Technology podcast. My name is Marius, and today I'll be going through the first article in a series that I've recently created, a new series based on video systems as used in the Pro AV industry. So you can find my latest articles at proavindustrytech77.blogspot.com, and without any further ado, let's go through part one of the new series. So just to start off, the different types of articles that I'll be creating in the coming weeks will be based around obviously video systems in the Pro AV industry. Today we'll be going through origins of projection technology, projection evolution, and projection screens. Then further on and down the line, we'll go through LCD, DLP, LED, and laser projectors. Then another article based on projection mapping. Then we go through rental and integrated LED screens, pixel mapping and LED controllers, commercial LED screens or panels, touch screens, video cameras, video switches, and broadcast video systems will round out the actual series. So I'll go through a little bit of a brief history here on the origins of projection technology. I'm not going to read all through this. It's there for you to read. There's a lot of information in here, so please feel free to visit my blog at proavindustrytech77.blogspot.com, and you can read through it at your own leisure. So I just wanted to go through quickly the different types of projectors as they originated, and obviously as we started using them in Pro AV technology over the years. So corporate America first introduced to projection technology in the 1950s. Used opaque projectors. These were tiny little projectors, almost like overhead projectors, which I'll go through a little bit later, which you could place, either print material or a little object or something, and then that could get projected onto a much larger obviously surface or wall or screen. Around about the same time in 1950, there was another type of projector called the slide projector. These predominantly used 35mm film, which was then placed in a little plastic holder, and then put it into something like this, specifically with the Elmo, that used a carousel type cartridge to place slides into, and then that obviously can get projected onto a wall. I personally used these for many years, specifically with medical conferences, because the image quality on them was so good that medical professionals use these to take detailed pictures, obviously using 35mm film in terms of photography, to then display them to audiences to show intricate details, specifically with medical procedures and so on and so forth. These actually came with different types of lenses, so you could actually put long throw lenses into these and then use them in the back of a room, because they were pretty bright, and then they could get used in auditoriums and halls and that sort of thing. So that brings back some memories. Overhead projectors, if you were like me in school in the 1980s and the 1990s, you saw a lot of these in classrooms. Overhead projectors sort of made their appearance in the early 1940s during World War II, where they were used for training. Overhead projectors uses a transparent sheet, which you can either write on, or you can print medium or text or that sort of thing onto. And then obviously that gets placed on the actual glass here, and the mirror itself here is what projects the image onto a screen. So that's overhead projectors. CRT projectors. So CRT projectors was this first sort of video projectors that was used. These also originated around about the 1950s. These use cathode ray tubes, whereas back in the early 1950s you got televisions made out of cathode ray tubes. They were normally black and white, and then a little bit later on the actual cathode ray tubes were color. The difference between a color television, CRT television, because the CRT television you combined red, green and blue to make obviously white, whereas a CRT had three separate CRT lenses, so that they can obviously produce separate colors, the separate red, green and blue, and then that converges onto a grid, which you need to do, and you line that up, which actually then makes up white. So I used to set these up as well back in the day when I first started in AV. Didn't use them that much, because that was sort of the time when LCD projectors started making an appearance in the rental markets. But these were great for viewing video, specifically with movies and that sort of thing. They were great. I actually knew a few people that actually had these set up in their houses and put them obviously to use in their home theaters. So they're very good. You don't get them much of anymore. There's not a lot of them left, but they were great for video projection. Then moving on, sort of the late 1980s and 1990s, that's when LCD projectors started making an appearance. These were originally called computer projectors because you could connect a computer directly to it, and then that will obviously display onto a screen, computer text or images, whatever the case may be. They weren't very bright. I mean, just to compare, at the time, an overhead projector could produce like 3000 anti-lumens of brightness, whereas this only produced like 200 or 300 anti-lumens of brightness. So it was still very, very early in the development of LCD or electric crystal display projectors. But yeah, obviously that's the origins of it and where it started, and thank goodness it's obviously moved on with technology as it progressed. So moving on into projection screens. There are various types of projection screens that you can find. The most common type obviously is your commercial movie theater. Commercial movie theaters use a very specific type of projection surface. These typically have tiny little holes in them because majority of movie theaters have audio systems, speakers and that sort of thing behind them, so it lets air through, so speakers are hidden. Fixed frame projection screens, I mean, these can be anything from from a concert hall or a home theater system or classroom or whatever. It just depends on the application, meaning it's fixed, it's not movable. Then you get pull down manual or electric pull down screens, meaning that these are you can either manually pull them down, or you can have an electric motor connected to them, which can obviously bring the screen up and down. These predominantly are found in classrooms or halls or wherever people want to obviously project an image onto. Then fully electric screens. These were a little bit obviously an advancement on the manual pull down screens, because these could potentially be built into a specific room or location, and they could hide themselves away, literally, just with the push of a button. So electric screens are predominantly wall mounted, and they are recessed into a ceiling, for instance. Then we move on to mobile screens. Mobile screens, are very, very good, and I've obviously made use of them over the years. This one here in particular is what I call a tripod screen. These were predominantly used for overhead projectors or slide projectors or LCD projectors in small little spaces. You could get different sizes of tripod screens. You still get them nowadays. So very versatile and obviously mobile. Then moving forward on to fast fold screens. These obviously made an appearance within the AV rental markets. And you can actually buy these in kits with front and rear projection surfaces, so you had the option of getting to a venue, set it up, and like, okay, well fine, let's do front projection, or no, let's do rear projection, depending on if you've got screens built into a set, or if you're using pipe and drape to close off and hide projectors behind them. So they were very versatile. A lot of people still use them, and in majority of kits you could purchase black velour dress kits to hide, to make it look like it's a theatre. So it's very nice in terms of use. I've used these for many years, and a lot of companies still prefer to use them specifically when they use projection. And then we move on to inflatable screens. I mean, these are definitely much larger format screens, predominantly for outdoor use. These can be used and found at film festivals, drive-in theatres, that sort of thing. Obviously for much larger audiences to see. So these use an air framework to obviously inflate the screen so that it's self-standing, but you still have to tether it off for safety purposes. Front and rear and twin projection screen surfaces. So over the years there's been a lot of development with regards to projection surfaces. the first sort of projection surfaces that we could use were front projection. A little bit later on, we could then make use of rear projection screen surfaces. And the difference, the way you can tell the difference between a front and rear projection surface is that a front projection surface typically is white, and the back of the actual screen surface itself is black, so it obviously doesn't let light through. With a rear projection surface, it's like a translucent sort of grey material, which means you can place a projector behind it, and then that will obviously let enough light through to see the image on the front of the screen. Twin projection surfaces are available as well. It just depends on the actual manufacturer. These typically are a white translucent sort of type of material, which means you can either project onto it from the front or you can project onto it from the rear, which obviously lets enough light through for rear projection. So yeah, that's it. So I just wanted to go through a quick recap of what we've learned with part 1. So video projection can trace its origins back to the late 1800s. Projection technology have evolved immensely since the 1950s. There's many projection screen options available to cater for most applications, and it's best to always consider your venue orientation before deciding on what projection method and screen type you would require. So yeah, next up we go through the differences between LCD, DLP, LED and laser projectors, and the basics of projection mapping. So yeah, thank you very much. I do really appreciate you all going and viewing my blog and reading through my blog. Please do take the time to like and subscribe, leave your comments, and I can definitely create more videos for my audience. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate it all, and I'll see you on the next one.